Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Today's episode, pretty special one. The top 100 players of 2017 list has finally ended, so I get to do one more episode revealing players. I was planning to do an extra bit on top of this, sort of going through some of the stats, but frankly I think that will take a while and probably merits its own episode, so that will come later in the week, depending if I can get that finished on time. It may come some point next week either way, it will be a bonus episode. So that's something for you guys to look forward to. I think it's going to be very good. I'll give a couple of hints as to some of the things I'll be discussing at the end of this episode. So as always, what I'll be doing is going through the 10 players revealed in the players list, my thoughts on where they've selected them, and then giving my own players that ranked in those positions in my own list. Of course, we knew who was going to be in this list going in. I've still got some players on my list that didn't make it because into the players list at this point, because I considered other positions for the top 10 beyond quarterbacks, receivers, and a couple other very special players. So we'll get right on in and discuss the player who finished number 10 on the players list, Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not sure how he finished this low, all things considered. You'll see where I've got him in my list later on in this episode. He was the MVP, and I think considering Brady had the suspension, you could argue Aaron Rodgers was perhaps more valuable to the Packers, but I think it was a perfectly legitimate MVP win. I think for that reason, almost alone, he kind of has to be in the top 5. So yeah, I feel this is a bit low, all things considered. As I've said before, this list is often a heavily career-based list, as we've seen by players who didn't play last season being in the list. Adrian Peterson, who made the list in spite of only playing, in 3 different separate appearances and being pretty poor in all of them. So I think that may be a lingering effect. Matt Ryan's been above average for the vast majority of his career without being truly exceptional last year. Of course, he did take that next step and play like a top-end passer in this league. So, thoroughly deserving of a top 10 spot. I just feel they got a bit low on this one. Myself coming in at the number 10 spot. This may not be a huge shock to anybody. We've got Von Miller of the Denver Broncos. A heck of a player. For me, the best edge rusher in the NFL right now, considering the quality of play he offers against the run. I think he's the toughest guy to block straight up in this league. He's got one of the best get-offs. He's got great hands. As a pass rusher, he truly has everything. He's got power. He can run like nobody's business, which I think it's more important than ever to have very athletic edge defenders, because, of course, the elusiveness and athleticism of most quarterbacks in this league is substantially higher than it's ever been. So I think his ability to move is an incredible asset. I think he could play standing up as a 4-3 backer if he wanted. I think he's that athletic. Doesn't have any true holes in his game. He's maybe a bit more aggressive than, say, division rival Khalil Mack, and in terms of playing the run before the pass before the run, my apologies. But I still think he's an absolute top tier weapon. He's absolute menace, and especially with DeMarcus Ware's retirement, I think he is now the leader of that front 7. So I'm sure he'll continue basically doing what he's been doing since he entered the league. He has been an absolute terror. So number 10 on my list. Coming in number 9 on the players list was a player I revealed last week, Le'Veon Bell. I would argue he's probably the most dangerous running back in football right now. However, I think last season David Johnson was the most impressive back in football, who I had coming in 11th last week. Just lost a big chunk of recording there. But we'll carry on. Just finished discussing Le'Veon Bell, who came in 9th on the players list. So we'll move on to my number 9 pick, and that is Seattle Seahawks linebacker Bobby Wagner, who I think was once again truly exceptional. With Kuechly missing a chunk of the season, Wagner assumes that top role. For me, he was the best player on the Seahawks defence last year. I think he has become the most consistent, reliable player and most important player there, particularly with the weakness I feel they've got at the defensive tackle spot. There's a lot on Wagner to make up for. I feel he does. I think he's improved in coverage over the last few seasons. And at this point, I think he's as good a player in the front seven as there is in the league. Of course, he doesn't get massive sack numbers, so he doesn't get attention in that way. And there are a lot of names on that Seattle defence. But I think this is the guy that's currently the most irreplaceable. Of course, he calls all the plays. He's a big hitter. He's a great tackler. And, he's fast enough to track most things down. He's probably not quite got Kuechly or maybe Levante David's range, but he's certainly not far off them. Truly great leader. I think he's essential to everything this Seattle defense does at this point in time. So for me, he's well deserving of a top 10 spot and comes in at the 9th spot on my list. Coming in 8th on the players list was Odell Beckham Jr. He only came 29th on mine. I have mentioned this many a time. I do feel like the players list has a bit more of a love in for wide receivers than I do personally. But, it is one of those things. I think last year was probably the toughest season he's had. The offense for the Giants was not great. He, for the most part, was the offense. So I do give him points for that. I just feel the consistency that isn't necessarily there with him, and that stems from himself. When he gets frustrated in games, guys can get in his head. I don't think he plays up to the level that he's set for himself. So I think last year was a little bit inconsistent at times. When he's on, I think he is the most dangerous receiver in the game. He's like Antonio Brown in a lot of ways. Incredible quickness and acceleration. I think basically impossible to cover in man coverage one-on-one. It's just not going to happen. He's going to run away from your guy just with ease. Obviously, we've seen all the catches he's made at this point in his career, capable of incredible feats of athleticism, has great hands, deep threat, can take short throws the distance. He can do it all for you. He's an incredibly unique weapon with his ability to be a smaller, quicker guy, but to go up and get the ball and make those contested catches. The only thing standing in his way is of being the top receiver on this list is Eli. The offensive line, the rest of the offense, and himself. So the Giants' offense, basically, as a whole. So we'll see how he does next year. Probably won't see as many balls with the talent that they've added in the passing game. So I'll be interested to see how that affects his overall play. Myself, at 8, I have offensive linemen still. So in comes Marshall Yonder of the Ravens. This is a heck of a guard for me. He's been the best lineman in football for the last few years. Even played a little bit of tackle in that time as the Ravens have needed him to. He's just stellar in every facet of the game. He's huge, incredibly strong. He's a road grader guard. He's basically immovable in pass protection. Just incredibly stout player. Very reliable. The Ravens need that because there's not a lot of talent on the offense. The offensive line has been somewhat shredded over the last couple of years, so they need a guy to anchor it. This is that guy. He's just been incredible in his consistency. Sets a very high standard. Unbelievable player. One of my favourites in the league and well deserving of a top 10 spot. Coming in 7th on the players list is a guy I revealed last week, Ezekiel Elliott. I had him, I believe, 14th on my list. Had a great season. I mentioned it in the previous episode. This guy has power. He's got home run speed. He's elusive, he's patient. I'd like to see him used a bit more in the passing game. I think he was pretty effective when called upon in that regard, and really impressed me with his pass protection. I couldn't have him above David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell for the simple reason they were asked to do so much in the passing game, and they delivered. I mean, Le'Veon Bell was averaging 150 yards from scrimmage. That's bonkers. David Johnson was carrying a fairly odd Cardinal attack last year, and they're very inconsistent. He wasn't behind a poor line, so I had to put them above him. But Zeke was fantastic, of course. He came 14th in my rankings. He's got a lot of help. The O-line is great, but don't let that take away from just how dynamic this guy was with the ball in his hands. Not surprised to see him this high up. Plays for the Cowboys. Certainly did a great job making a name for himself last year. He was the key cog, along with that offensive line, of course, in the turnaround Dallas had last year. Myself, at that spot, I actually had one of his buddies from that line, Travis Frederick, the top-ranked offensive lineman on my list. I know, only 2 centres on my list, which is not a huge number. I was sort of looking at it, I was like, I wanted to put more centres on, but I can't. Pouncey's both get injured. And there's no one else just kind of on the level that if I was to put them in their list, it would just be to put more centres on the list. And that's not something that I'm looking to do. But this guy has been phenomenally consistent since, I laughed at the draft pick. Like most people did. If everyone's honest, 99% of people were laughing at the Cowboys for this draft selection. While they and Frederick have proved everyone wrong, he has been shown to be worth far more valuable than the selection that was used on him. He's going to keep being this caliber player. I mean, we've seen he's been in the league a while now, and he's just flat out dominant. A lot of centres, I think, struggle to block guys one-on-one. Frederick can do that. Defensive linemen like the big guys. Frederick can. He's strong enough. He's athletic enough that you can use him on all kinds of crazy screens and tosses and sweeps. He can actually get there. Great in pass protection. Does an amazing job organising this group. When you look at some of the lanes, it's a combination of talent and his ability to get guys in the right spot, communicate with his line. That's essential, of course, at that position. He does a great job. And for me, he's the gold standard at the position, the gold standard of interior lineman, him and Marshall Yonder. Great season. It was a toss-up between who to put higher. I only went with Frederick over Yonder simply because of the Cowboys' overall team success and the value that I place on calling the line, the protections on the line. So well deserving of a top 10 spot, even if the players show no respect to interior linemen in particular, although there are a big lack of tackles on the list. So coming in at 6 on the players list, Aaron Rodgers, who probably would have been number 1, I would think, if he'd played the whole season like he played the second half of the season, which was frankly unbelievable. One of the most absurd tears I've ever seen a player go on. When he is at his best, I think he's the best player in the NFL, possibly the best player I've seen at the quarterback position. It's ridiculous. Outside the pocket, there's nobody better. He can beat teams with his legs. It's always been a somewhat understated element of his game, but he is a very effective and dangerous runner. Ability to throw on the run is beyond anyone else. Like no one else is even close to being as accurate as he is. Can beat you from the pocket. You've got to get pressure on him, and you've got to keep it on him, because if you give him 2 seconds to make a throw, then there's a good chance he's going to beat you. Makes it look easy. This is a good ranking by the players because it's very close to where I've got him. I've not got him at 6, but very, very close. So I can't disagree with it. For me, probably the best passer in the best quarterback in the league. He would have been higher up had the first half of the season been a bit better. But bear in mind what he's doing it with. I think especially next year, the interior could be pretty weak. They've lost most of those guys. The run game hasn't been particularly good. The defense hasn't been great. The Packers go as Aaron Rodgers goes. What a player. Coming in 6th on my list, another Aaron Donald of the LA Rams, the most disruptive defender in football right now, unless JJ Watt comes back, exactly the JJ Watt that we saw last time he was on an NFL field. This guy reminds me a lot of Warren Sapp. As a Bucs fan, of course we remember Sapp fondly. Donald's got a similar play style because they're a bit shorter than your average defensive lineman. Gets underneath guys, he's got that same sort of get off and quickness to just run round guys, can run through guys because he just gets underneath their pads, and he's incredibly strong. I think he's unblockable one-on-one because he can beat you with speed, power, quickness. He just do what he wants. Got great hands. Already developed an array of moves. He's fantastic against the run. There is literally no weakness in his game. He's pretty damn good at everything. You can't even just look at the numbers. You just have to watch tape because the amount of plays he just ruins instantly. May not get a tackle, may not even necessarily get a direct pressure or hurry on a quarterback, but just changes what the offensive plan was immediately off the snap of the ball. He is ridiculous. If he just had a bit more help, because I think the Rams defense, with Quinn's injury last year, weren't exactly playing to the standard they could, because there is some pretty good personnel there, but this guy every week lights out a heck of a player, and it's ridiculous that he didn't make the top 10. I mean, I don't know what some of these players are watching. I guess they're not. The Rams were pretty hard to watch last year, so I guess I can't blame them necessarily for that. So coming in 5th on the players list was the actual defensive MVP, Khalil Mack. What is there to say about Mack? He had an incredible season. Great hitter. Just had a knack for making plays at the right time. Plays the run ferociously. That's what I love about him. And he belts people. You don't get all those fumbles unless you're a hitter. Plays with great power. The only thing I like to see is maybe a bit more finesse, maybe his pass rushing, because he's a bit bull in his China shot, kind of just trying to run through guys or just run straight around him. It works, but I think a little bit more technique and he'd be unstoppable there. But the way he plays the run sets the edge. And the freakish athleticism, you could play him as a 4-3 backer, as we've seen, and he does a great job there. Can chase plays down, very good at shedding blocks, hits hard, can run. A lot of the stuff I said about Von Miller applies here, in terms of you got to be able to chase guys down and not get shook that sort of stuff you didn't used to see, but a lot of quarterbacks are capable of doing it now. And I give him a lot of credit because I don't think there's a lot of talent on the Raiders defense, or at least there wasn't last year. So he had, much like when I was talking about Beckham and David Johnson and Mike Evans, this is a guy that had to deal with the fact he was public enemy number 1 on 90% of plays last season, and that might even be an understatement, and was still incredibly productive, had a great season. Defensive MVP was wide open. There were a few guys it could have gone to, but Mack was certainly deserving of being one of the guys that was considered and eventually won. So no complaints there. I've got a similar ranking for him, still not being revealed on my list. Next up on my list, as I said, he was coming up soon, Aaron Rodgers. I've just discussed him, so I'm not going to dwell on it too long. But as I say, my favourite quarterback to watch in the league right now. There's nobody else quite like him. He's ridiculous. And the only thing that kept him, and 5 is still a good finish, because as I say, that run at the end of the season was absurd. Probably the highest level of quarterbacking I've seen a guy go on. It was absolutely bonkers watching him at times. So we'll move on to player number 4. Finished 4 last year on the players list, Antonio Brown. He was revealed a little lower on my list, maybe being spoilt by him. His numbers the last years have been ridiculous. It was a bit of a down year. I think part of that is more of a focus. There was no Martavis Bryant this year. They ran the ball a lot towards the end of the season. I think Roethlisberger was dealing with some kind of injury or something. I've said it many times. He wasn't quite himself. Brown's numbers suffered as a result. But he's much like Odell Beckham Jr., just an electric playmaker, uncoverable one-on-one. great after the catch, incredibly quick, has great hands, is a deep threat, heck of a player. The numbers he's putting up are bonkers. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's a great player. And I'm not surprised to see him this high up. He really has made a name for himself over the last few years. Number 4 on my list. I'm not going to dwell on this one too long either. This is where Khalil Mack came for me. Oh no, it wasn't. This is my top receiver. This is Julio. Julio could have come higher up. He could have even contended for number 1 because I think he was that good when he was on the field last year. The other guys took away from some of his numbers because this was a very good and balanced offense. But you have to bear in mind some of the ridiculous catches this guy was making. In spite of the guys around him, this was still the dude teams most have to get up to stop. I think he's the most gifted receiver in the league right now. That size, speed combination. He's got quickness. He can run great, clean routes. Can run after the catch and beat guys with jukes or just run straight over them in the case of defensive backs. Great leaping ability, superb hands. He's just got better and better with each year he's been in the league. He's kind of took Megatron's title as, the physical dominant freak. It was Randy Moss, then there was Megatron, and now we've got Julio. He's an absolutely incredible player. He did his bit for the Falcons last year. The only thing that slows him down is that he does seem to get banged up a fair bit, but when he's healthy, he is the hardest to stop. I always will tend to favour the big receivers. They just get more touchdowns. That red zone ability to just throw fades to them is invaluable. The fact they can just maul guys when blocking, and when they're covered, they're not truly covered. That's especially true of Julio. What a player. He's my top rated wide receiver, and he comes in 4th. Very close to where the players end up having him. So we'll move on to number 3 on the players list, and that's the guy I just discussed, Julio. So I'm not sure if there's anything more to say. He's an absolute monster. When it comes between him, Brown, I throw Evans and Beckham in this as well, because I think they're 2 A and B in regards to these positions. It comes down to the flavour of receiver you'd like. Jones and Evans for me. That's my type of guy. I want the big dudes at that position. So number 3 on my list. I spoiled that one a little second ago, but I'm not re-recording again. Khalil Mack, the defensive MVP. So me and the players very close for these last few picks. It is the very top of the list. It should somewhat pick itself. Not much more to say on him. He's incredible. He had a great season, and the crazy thing is he could just keep getting better. Especially I think this Raiders team has added a fair bit of talent defensively. So let's see if he can repeat phenomenal season that he had last year. This was a surprise to me, seeing Von Miller, who I had at number 10, which I think was fair, come in at 2. I think this comes to testament. He is the best pass rusher in the league, in my opinion, and I think the players probably agree with me. I think the hardest job in the NFL is being a tackle, having to go up against this guy, because he can beat you with speed, power, and technique. He can do it all. I discussed him earlier at 10, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. Like a lot of this list, this one goes a bit quicker because I'll talk about a lot of the same players. So I think you can see this year's list in particular has been incredibly pass rusher heavy. That includes even guys on the interior. So I think people understanding that a lot of pass rushers, QBs, and wide receivers, clearly the passing game is what gets you on this list. That's just the way the modern NFL is played, I suppose. And this may be the most dangerous defender in the league in terms of pass defense. So fair enough having him there. Myself, I had Matt Ryan at number 2. He just played at such a high level last year. I know he had a lot of help around him, but he's the guy that made it go. And he just made it look easy. This offense generally didn't necessarily have to make a huge amount of difficult throws. They could run on teams, was very good on the play action, good throwing on all three levels, deep, short, medium. It didn't matter. He was throwing to a lot of guys that were wide open. They were beating teams with scheme, they were beating teams with talent, and they were beating teams with some clutch, high pressure throws. From Ryan, who played behind a better line than usual. I think we've seen over the years, if he's pass protected, Ryan is as good as anyone. I'm not sure he's the best when he's pressured, but when you keep him clean, he's as good as there is in this league. Had an exceptional season. I want to see the follow-up now that Kyle Shanahan's gone, but he came in at 2 on my list, and he was the MVP after all. I don't know how you can have him at 10 and then have him win MVP. That's bizarre to me. And number 1, I'm not going to talk about the players or myself. We both agreed on this one. So the grand finale, Tom Brady at number 1. I just don't think you can argue it. The man threw 2 interceptions. I know he missed games, and generally I have been harsh on guys that have missed games in terms of my list, but I mean, the guy threw 2 interceptions in the regular season, even if it was slightly shortened. And what was it, 28 touchdowns? That's 67.4 completion percent. He made it look easy, and they're not. I think next year they're maybe the most talented bunch, but with Gronk injured, it wasn't the most talented bunch of receivers. But this guy, he will spam you to death like a kid playing Madden. The dinky dunk stuff, I don't think he throws the ball deep a huge amount anymore. I'm not sure if he's necessarily got the arm to just air it out like he did back in 2009, that crazy season. But that was 2007. Wow, that made me feel old there. But you only have to watch the tape. Look how easy he makes football at this stage in his career. The last few years, vintage old man Brady is the best Brady for me, because it's just watching a guy who understands exactly what he's doing on the field. The command of the offense, the calmness, the accuracy, the anticipation. It's all there. He's better at moving in the pocket now than when he was in his 20s. He's just crazy what a high level he's playing. I mean, I suppose Peyton, other than that last season, did a similar thing with the Broncos. Brady's not really got the injuries to slow him down, so I don't know what will at this point. You can see the arm starting to lose it a little, I think, but he makes up for it with absolutely everything else. And yeah, last year he was the best player in the NFL. He'd have won MVP if he'd been available for all 16 games. He gets a lot of help, but he is the help in a lot of ways. So there you go, Tom Brady. Me and the players in agreement. So what do you guys think? Gonna probably post the list up as a whole under one of my videos, maybe the recap one, so there'll be a more direct comparison. As I say, that episode will be going up later this week, maybe early next week, depends how long it takes to get done, where I sort of analyse some of the numbers, the differences between my list and the players list. But let me know what you think of the episode, the series as a whole. Or if you just want to talk football, you've got the comment section below, Cover Zero on Facebook, find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to discuss ball. As always, if you enjoyed it, if you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that stuff, it'd be massively appreciated. I really do appreciate everyone who checks the show out. It's very cool. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the power rankings if you haven't already, because I think they're really good. It's a different take on power rankings. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and go Bucks.